morning, Mr. Kennedy. Good morning, everybody.
Good morning, Chair.
Yes, are we ready?
We are ready. Thank you, Chair. Before we call or ask leave to call the next witness, Chair, may I raise a point that flows from yesterday's proceedings? You will recall our first witness yesterday was Mr. Sadiq, the current acting GCEO of the Denel Group, and he undertook to provide by way of an affidavit the settlement agreement that was concluded between Denel and Ms. Africa, the former company secretary of Denel. That undertaking has now been fulfilled and he's provided an affidavit. May I take you in bundle 12, Denel bundle 12. The support staff have taken the liberty of inserting into bundle 12
what page?
The affidavit. It's at page 665.
Yes, I've got it.
That is a very brief affidavit from Mr. Sadiq,
Yes.
the one he promised yesterday. And attached to that is a document headed Notification of Termination of Service. And following that, from page 669, is the actual termination of employment agreement. This is the settlement agreement that he referred to. And if I may draw your attention, Chair, in particular to page 676, paragraph 7.1, sets out the package equivalent to 12 months salary, an ex gratia amount of 1.6 odd million. Sorry, it's 1.642 million.
Yes.
In her case.
Yeah.
May we then ask leave to have that admitted formally as an exhibit in the Commission? Mr. Sadiq's affidavit was previously admitted as Exhibit W26. We would ask the for leave for this affidavit with its annexures from page 665 to be admitted as Exhibit W26.1.
The affidavit of Mr. Talib Sadiq, starting at page 665, is admitted as Exhibit W26.1 together with its annexures.
Thank you, Chair. May we then ask your leave to call our next witness? It is Mr. Mancha.
Yes, okay. Please administer the oath. Good morning, Mr. Mancha. Good morning. Yes.
Please state your full names for the record.
My names are Isani Daniel Mancha.
Do you have any objection to taking the prescribed affirmation?
No.
Do you solemnly affirm that the evidence will give will be the truth, the whole truth and nothing else but the truth? If so, please raise your right hand and say, I truly affirm.
I truly affirm.
Thank you. You may be seated.
Thank you, Chair. May I direct your attention to the fact that Mr. Mancha is today assisted by a legal team of our learned friend, Mr. Jaap Cilliers, from
Yes.
the Pretoria Bar, instructed by attorneys Denga.
Yes. Mr. Cilliers, would you like to place yourself on record, just from where you are?
As you please, Chair, I am indeed J.G. Cilliers. I'm a senior counsel from Pretoria, and I am instructed by my learned attorney who's sitting on my left-hand side, Mr. Dinga, on behalf of the witness.
Yes. Thank you very much, Mr. Cilliers. Yes, Mr. Kennedy.
Thank you, Chair. My learned friend has requested an opportunity for the witness to address you briefly in some introductory remarks.
Yes.
Chair, subject to your guidance and ruling, we have no objection to that
Yes.
process.
Yes, no, that's fine. Mr. Mancha, you may address me. Yes, you may do so.
Thank you, Chair. I appear before you, Chair, as the former chairperson of the Denel Board. So I'm going to speak as far as the acts, decisions, of the board that I led as a chair and I serve as a non-executive director, has taken, as far as it relates to issues which are being investigated by this commission. To the best of my abilities, I'll try to recall. As we know, this is 5 years ago. I might not have certain details. When you hear me talking about we, I would be referring to the colleagues that I served with at the board, and I will also deal with any matter that might relate to me in my personal capacity. So I think it's important to place a number of issues into perspective to give the chairperson the context and to give the commissioner legal team the context. I think we all know some of the decisions taken. They were in the media and there were a lot of speculation about what could have been the motives. I think, just to start, let me explain the formation of what is known as Denel Asia. And I do so, Chairperson, on the basis of the information within my knowledge and the information which it has been relayed to me. For a start, Denel went to India on its own 20 years or more before my appointment as a board chairperson and my board in 2015. But what then happened, Denel got blacklisted in India, and reasons being they were accused of engaging in illegal activities, inter alia corruption and bribery. So ever since then, there's been litigation between the authorities in India and Denel as a result of those allegations. My understanding is, of course, the authorities in India and here, they had discussions to try to resolve the matter. The matter was also in the Supreme Court in India, and that litigation dragged for a long time. So, as far as 20 or 25 years before my arrival, Denel had targeted the Indian market. They went there, but from what I understand, they went there the wrong way. During the February 2015, as I understand, the litigation and the dispute between the authorities here and India, I think, came to close. I might not be able to relate the date or the year, whether it was 2014 or 2015. So when that matter was resolved, I think February 2015, Denel sent a delegation to India to just try to feel the situation, since at that stage in February 2014, the matters were resolved. And Chair, as I have taken the position from July, I'm not sure about the date, but July 2015. Yeah. So, so the process at that stage in February to engage that market, we were not there. Then, during the induction, as a new board, the inductions are normally presented by the executive management of the company and the leadership of the department. Of course, the department will take you through the protocols, the regulatory environment as far as the company relates to them. And of course, the management will take you through the strategic issue the direction where the company is going to go, and all sorts of things. At that point, I don't remember exactly who has handed to me a document called Note Verbal. Note Verbal is a diplomatic language, a communication between one state to another, and that document simply says, well, the dispute between Denel and the Indian authorities has been resolved. That's fine. But of course, during the induction, as the executive are trying to project, the current business, the future and everything. So Indian market has been always a very important market for Denel because even the studies at that time as presented, they were showing is the fastest growing market. So that was fine. The meeting of my board, the first meeting was on the 10th of September, 2015. In that meeting, of course, we have been taken through discussion of the previous board and, the strategic issues, of which, again, the expansion of Denel into that market. Because maybe just to give a little background, the foreign market of Denel, it was at my time, it was mainly in the Middle East. And that market had its own complicity. And of course, the domestic market, which is the South African Defence Force, I think it is an open secret that every budget vote, I think we can go as early as ever since the dawn of democracy. The defense budget vote is decreasing all the time because, of course, the sovereign has got pressing issues to a point where the domestic defense market cannot sustain the company. So that's a strong argument made. And Chair, I happen to have the minutes, but of course I don't want to hand them to you unless if you permit me to do so, which has captured the presentation on the 10th of September of my new board. And in that presentation, there is an overview. Maybe
before I forget, do feel free to hand them to the legal team so that they can assess them, and at the right time they can make them available to me.
Well, Chairperson, with your direction,
yes,
I'm fine to do so.
Yes, okay.
I'm fine to do so.
Okay,
I will
right.
do so.
Okay.
So at that stage...
Mr. Chair, maybe if I can just interrupt, it's not a situation where Mr. Mancha has any reservations of handing it in. He's just worried about maybe confidentiality situations between him and Denel.
Oh,
so he's got it available and he's willing to hand it to you.
Yes.
It's only that I didn't have enough time to prepare on the issue. So it's just a question of his worry that he doesn't want to breach the confidentiality situation with Denel.
No, that's fine. I understood him also to be feeling free to hand them in, but I just thought it's better that the legal team sees them first before they get to me. Yeah.
As you please.
Yes, okay.
Thank you, Chairperson.
Yes.
Then a presentation is made of the markets that the company should go to. And a resolution on the 10th of September was thought by the executive that said the executive must be mandated to explore the Indian market. Basically to go and see if we can set a company, now the formation of the company. So a resolution was presented, was approved by the board as requested by the management. And ever since then, work was being done by the management, and the management briefing the board on what was happening as far as that process is concerned. So I must say to you, Chair, that that process was undertaken in terms of the PFMA. That process was undertaken in consultation with the department and in consultation with the National Treasury. There have been a number of meetings where the executives met National Treasury and met the Department of Public Enterprise to discuss the time frame of when to submit and what information is required. And as a matter of standard, when a state-owned company intends to form a joint venture or go into another market, you have to get a permission from the executive authority. But before you get that permission, you must give a pre-notification to the executive authority to say, look, I'm going to form this, or I'm going to this market for these reasons. The executive authority will ask you the questions, would make whatever inputs are concerned, and that position was done. To a point where the formal applications were made. I think they were submitted around 15 December. Around somewhere 15 December or 13 December, I don't recall. But before they were submitted, again, there was a meeting where the whole process was explained. And the agency of the matter was explained. In terms of the context I'm trying to give, Chair, is that the journey of Dinel to Asia or to India started almost 30 or more years back. And when Dinel was freed from those corruption and whatever thing, it eagerly wanted to enter the market. And the agency, Chair, was triggered by a number of reasons. One reason was, at the time when we took over in July, Dinel debt level at that stage was very high. If I remember well, Dinel had over 8 billion facilities with the banks. This relates to, because when you tender for an arms procurement, whatever the thing, there's always guarantee payments, bond, and whatever. So Dinel was 8 billion rand and was left with like 2 billion in terms of the facilities it had. Dinel at that stage owed Nedbank and ABSA over 4.8 billion. And at that point, I think the creditors from just suppliers, small and medium companies, I think it was over 200 million debts which were over 200 days unpaid. So there was a very serious cash problem, and also compounded by the transaction which Dinel just acquired, LSSA, for over $750 million, and Dinel had no funds to service that kind of transaction. So the company was in a dire need to actually find new market and try to generate some revenue. So when I look at it, Chair, by the time my board came in, Dinel was already a sinking ship. The debts level were too high. That's why, in terms of the transaction, which I will talk a little bit because it has triggered the suspension of CFO and the CE then, the advice at that point was Dinel could not be able to service any debt, and if Dinel wanted to take any debt like LSSA, it must request the sovereign to try to put the money. So we were in that situation, and my board was committed to save the sinking ship. And the only way to save the sinking ship was to try to make decisions, to try to get the new markets where you can earn revenue. So there was no rush to the decision of Dinel Asia, as I've already explained when it started. So the situation was not getting better, but the applications were sent, the department was sensitized on the urgency of the matter, and I think, Chairperson, one appreciation should be, Dinel, unlike ESCOM, does not get any guarantee from the state. If the South African Defence Force wants equipment, they can go to anyone else, including Dinel. So we don't have a reserved, Dinel does not have a reserved market, be it domestic, be it international. So everything that it does, it has to compete. And as you know, Chair, business is about opportunities, and opportunities are not there all the time. And the business that we're talking about is a very hard business. One is not selling cell phone, one is selling weapons of mass destruction. And the consumption is the state, is to state to state. So it's a very difficult business to get involved. It has got a lot of red tapes, it has got a lot of regulation. That's why other people call armed dealers, whatever the case might be. It's not a simple business. So when you're into that business, you have got no time to sleep, because when you look at it, you compete with big defense companies coming from big countries like United States, Russia, China, and others, who have got more financial muscle to take you off the way and political muscle to just get deals away. So it's a business that requires serious agility, and you have to take decisions and try to execute, because it's a very difficult market. So all of this is sensitized to the department, but then the applications were made in terms of the law. The applications, of course, after 30 days, the law says if you don't get an answer from the executive authority in 30 days, you must assume that it's granted. The law is there for a reason. And of course, as law-abiding board, we acted according to the provision of that act. And we even went further to try to get a declaratory order that we complied. But Chair, I must say to you that when you apply these permissions from executive authority, which is public enterprise and national treasury, because Dinel had to get approval from national treasury on the basis that national treasury has given a guarantee. At that stage, I think it was 1.8 billion. So whatever transaction you have to do, national treasury must see it and look at it. So from that point, the company was launched, all the regulatory matters were followed, and something that we didn't know, there was a political situation in the country, and in terms of that political situation in the country, certain events happened in December 2015, and those events were linked to the establishment of Dinel Asia. All sorts of connections were made, the relationship between other people to other people, and this is how it happened. But I'm here, Chair, to explain the basis upon which the board took those decisions and the information which was before the board. This information was not only before the board, but was before National Treasury and the Department of Public Enterprise. This included a proper business case, the due diligence report which have been done to all the parties. But by that stage, the partner that Dinel had picked to go to the Asian market with, instead of looking at the business case of the formation, the politics overwhelmed the business because of the links of the partner and all the explanations which were portrayed in the media. But that as it may, it created problems for the company. We wanted to do business, not to deal with all sorts of things, political issues and other things which were playing out in the media. We then decided as a responsible board to say, look, our intention to go to the Asian market was firstly, and inter alia with all the other things, our engineers are sitting idly. There is no work. We have got no cash. The young generation of engineers are not getting expertise because we have got no work. And the employment situation, we will be forced to retrench many people because there is no business. So we considered many factors. I think all of it is said in the applications. We considered many factors, but our conclusion was it is in the best interest of the Republic that the foreign entity would earn a foreign currency to the Republic. Anyway, the Republic was 51%. Anyway, the Republic was not putting a cent into that investment. The Republic was making available the expertise of its engineers and the technology. The partner was putting 100 million to have that business work. And Chair, you would know that in any business, you can never give guarantee that the business is going to be successful. The true heart of an entrepreneur is to take a chance and calculate the chance. And I can certainly tell you that the chance that was taken, the company had worked on it for many years. And even before my arrival and the arrival of my board, the company has gone through that process. The company was satisfied that a proper case was made, that there is reasonable prospect that we're going to be successful in that business. And as responsible board, we took that decision. But you might not be aware, Chair, in terms of the governance procedures of how these things come into play. I think it's important because you sit with all these allegations, and I must, as I sit here, share my experience with you on certain things that the protocols that follows. The executive of the company generate a business case. They bring the business case, before they bring it to the board, the business case goes to several committees of the board. The Social and Ethics Committee will deal with the social aspect of that business case. The Audit and Risk will deal with the business case and all sorts of things, the HR and all. So it goes to those committees, and those committees look at it. It comes to the board, and then the board will hear the reports from various committees and deliberate on them, and deliberate on recommendations of various committees, and either say, management, we agree with this, or we don't agree with this, or go and make a follow-up on this. And when you look at this, the transaction that I'm talking about, there was extensive work done to try to cover certain areas. But be that as it may, Chair, I just want to clarify and correct the incorrect information which has been played for some time, that the appointment of myself as the chair and the board was to initiate the Indian Denel project. And it is not true. The project was there before we started. Yes, the project, as I said, was to the best interest of this country, was going to create employment, was going to as you know, that defense companies do a lot of diplomacy because they carry your national flag. And defense companies do a lot of geopolitical work. So in totality, from the geopolitical point of view, it was great for the country from the diplomatic point of view, it was great for the country. But as a state-owned companies, something that I'm sure, Chair, you have observed many times from the witnesses that you have listened to, sometimes politics overcome a business case. And with respect to the Chair, my conclusion and my experience with this, as the Chair of the board and my board, the politics and the events which were happening at the time, which we had no control of, it's only when I listen to people talking in this commission, say, oh, could that have been the reason why there was no answer here, is because of this information. But all our interest was to push a business. That's all we're trying to do. So it is, again, not correct that the suspension of the executive had anything to do with the move to go to India. The suspension of the executive had everything to do with a transaction which they presided over during our appointment as a board. And this is the transaction where Dinel went to buy a company for 855 million. When we started our work on the 10th of September, we were then told that Dinel must pay 445 million to Nedbank on the 30th of September. That was a hell shock to us. So, of course, we probed how did this happen. There was a transaction which was started before us, the acquisition of the LSSA, and the manner that the transaction was structured and the information which was presented to the board gave rise to the suspension of the CFO and the CE. Unfortunately, that transaction, of course, was not presided by our board. But our board, in terms of the conditions from National Treasury, when National Treasury approved that board, they put a very stringent condition, and one of it was the board should make irrevocable undertaking that Dinel will not go to the state and look for funding to finance anything that might come out of this transaction. And Dinel should be able to repay, I think it was 650 million of the guarantee at a specific time. So of course my board is confronted with those issues. There was no stage we could make that irrevocable undertaking. There was no money to service that debt. We did not have the 455 million to pay to Nedbank on the 30th of September. And the basis of agreeing to an arrangement that you would get a bridging finance for 6 months, while the approval by the executive authority and National Treasury, they were based on the fact that the loan terms were 5 years. And when all of that was changed to 6 months, without the executive authority getting involved, and the real implication of that, Chair, of not paying the 455 million on the 30th September to Nedbank would have meant a default. And in terms of the protocol that operates, because state-owned companies, they go to the bond market, raise cash, and some of it is guaranteed by the state. So Dinel had, at that stage, I think bonds around 3 billion plus. And the default would have triggered the bondholders to recall their facilities, which would mean, apart from the 455 million that we have to pay, we then have to pay 3-point-something billion. And the effect was beyond Dinel, because then it would mean the bondholders of other state-owned companies, it would trigger a cross default against all the state-owned companies. So new as we were, we were overwhelmed. We were completely overwhelmed to say, well, we are the people who are going to preside over this catastrophe. We did not want to do that. So we acted. We took a decision. We suspended them because we were convinced that that was reckless lending, and the protocols which they were told to be followed were not followed. But we moved there, and I think towards the end, I think on the meeting of the 10th, then the resolution was made by the board to say the Audit and Risk Committee should work with the then management to try to avert the situation and investigate exactly what happened. So I then undertook a trip with the former CE, whom I must say we had a very good, cordial working relationship. We undertook a trip. We had discussion about the situation. I think some of it,
with the
former CE,
Mr.
Salucci.
Oh, okay.
So we had a very good working relationship. And part of the discussions we had, of course, was the situation back at home. At that point, of course, we realized how grave the situation was. And he then said to me, but Chair, don't get us fired here. So I said, well, let's go back home. We will hear what the Audit and Risk Committee has found. So the point I'm making again is there was no intention to suspend anybody. The evidence which we were confronted with was such that the two executives recklessly, and they've breached even the conditions of grant. Therefore, an action had to be taken. I, as a person, Chair, having experience of working with a lot of people who have lost jobs or representing them. So I am biased in trying to fire someone. And I would do that only if there was nothing else to do. There were a lot of efforts to try to get cooperation, to try to get more information. I think even the meeting that they had with the Audit and Risk Committee lasted for a very long time, and a board meeting convened very late, and certain decisions were taken. But suffice to say to you that those decisions were taken in the best interest of the company. It had nothing personal against the executive. As I say to you, I think even the former CE would say we had a very good, cordial relationship. I actually liked him. I thought he liked me too. So we were working well together. We had no issues. But the facts were such, a decision had to be taken and he had to be suspended. Then, of course, we then moved to the issue of the settlement. When we were faced with that situation, overwhelmed as we were, the attention of the board was, firstly, we shouldn't allow there should be a cross default across all the state-owned companies. We shouldn't allow the collapse of Dinel. Yes, we don't have the 455, but at that stage, Nedbank was very angry. Nedbank was angry because when the money was borrowed from them, Nedbank was informed, this is my understanding, was informed that give us 455, the 400 we will pay from our own pockets. Nedbank then realized that the 400 which they paid to make 855 came from ABSA. And ABSA was given a security of 400 million, which was the money that was ring-fenced by the company in terms of a Webster project, whatever. So they were very angry. And again, the specific condition of approval by the Minister of Public Enterprise was, please don't play the banks against one another. And here we are. Nedbank is angry. that, look, all you did to us was to put security of shares. But with ABSA, you put security, real security, you put the money. So there was a tense relationship arising of that. And this is when we understood that Nedbank, in fact, conducted a due diligence. I don't have the facts to the report to anything. This is the understanding as it was relayed to me, that they advised Dinel that, look, you don't have money to do this transaction and you are highly indebted. So if you say this deal has everything to do with the National Defence Force, then ask them to put the money. So the relationship with Nedbank at that point was not good because they felt they were misled. They were not treated equally like ABSA. So the focus of the board and the acting executive was to try to get a deal with Nedbank, to extend the terms that we don't pay the money at that time. Eventually an agreement was reached that gave us a little bit of space, and I think they said, okay, pay us a half. I think it was another 6 months, but I'm not sure. And then, of course, we had no option. It's either pay us a half or we want all the money. I think then a deal was reached. The CFO, the then CFO, the then acting CFO, and members of the Audit and Risk Committee, they were working full-blown on this. So that agreement was reached. Then we had to scrape through and try to find some cash so that we don't default. And at that point, Chair, we had no focus on the disciplinary issues of these two executives. The matter, of course, as you know, it's an administrative matter that is run by your HR and the company secretary and all sorts of things. But unbeknown to us, political events were building up. There were hearings and change and this, but just to set the record straight, we were consumed to try to deal with what we considered a real matter. But then political events overtook a lot of things to a point where we come to a conclusion as a board, after we have been advised by the management, that on the basis that the market that we deal with is very sensitive. When you go out there and discuss these transactions, they want to know that you will stay tomorrow. You're the man that they will be dealing with you tomorrow. And then, of course, when you deal with a local situation like your creditors, the banks, of course they want certainty to say, look, if we make an agreement with you today, nobody is going to come tomorrow and try to change it because you won't be there. So the overall interest of business then informed us as proposed by the management to say, look, we cannot afford to have this matter being protracted because, one, we're not having stability internally, and two, it's raising concern in the market because the people we're borrowing money from, they want to deal with something stable. So we considered the issues. And at that stage, of course, there was full-blown litigation by the suspended employee. And Chair, sometime in leadership, you have to balance the interest. And of course, Chair would know with your vast experience in many of these matters. And in terms of our collective wisdom, we look at all the factors and we consider that business stability and continuity, it's more important than any other thing because we're trying to save the ship. We then consider the implication of all the legal cost that, already we were paying, and we felt it will be in the interest of the company to close the chapter. That's how the settlement was arrived at. and then we move from there. But linking it back to the VR laser, which I think clearly, with many evidence that Chair has had so far, was a company which had a relationship with Denel and concluded certain agreement, and that was before the appointment of my board. So I'm not able to tell you what was considered that influenced the management at that stage. There was a board, there were executives at that stage. I cannot talk to you about that. But all I can say is the management who were in charge at the stage of the agreement considered whatever they've considered, and they've entered into those agreements. And linking the VR as a partner, which has been doing the work with Denel before our coming, and the VR Asia, which is owned by a majority shareholder of VR South Africa. So of course, a case was made to us, a business case was made to us, as I've already alluded to it, that there was substantial investment cash-wise that the VR Asia was going to put. And there was a proper shareholding agreement where the state had 51%. There was a due diligence report, of course, which raised a number of things, and as a board, we said, let's try to protect what we have to protect. So there is no link between suspension and Denel Asia, as I've already alluded to you. I think if I can just take a simple logic, the evidence is that the former CE, before the acting CE that we've appointed, had introduced this company to Denel for reasons known by himself. But I take a view, Chair, that I presume that we all mean well. And I wouldn't sit here and speculate that other people don't mean well. I work on the basis that he meant well, for whatever reasons. So he would have, in terms of my analysis of the business case, any competent chief executive officer would have been convinced about the case which was made to go to India. And anyway, the minutes that I'm going to hand to your legal team relates to the resolution that he himself proposed, that we must give him that permission. So again, it's factually not correct that his suspension had anything to do with Denel Asia. So I understand, I think I was here, Chairperson, when this commission was, I think the first sitting of the commission. I've listened to the leading evidence leader, Mr. Pretorius SC, when he was putting the pillars of the alleged state capture, which is put new boards. My board came into being after the previous board has run its life. So it was a natural progression because boards are given specific time. So there was no removal of a board to get my board in. And secondly, removing the chief executive and the CFO to make a way for capture. And I say, Chair, clearly there was no reason for us to even be alleged that that was the case. The removal of this executive had everything to do with a transaction which originated before my board was appointed. Any prudent board would have taken the decision that we have taken. So there is no link of their departure with whatever the allegations on the state capture mechanism is. So there isn't. So of course it's very convenient, Chair. I think you know better than us, you have been listening to this evidence. It's very convenient for people, for reasons known to themselves, to cry victim. But a political situation was created where it was easy to say certain things and people could easily believe you. But these are the facts. And I'm happy, Chair, that also other independent people alluded to some of the things that I'm saying. So there is no link with that. So then there are issues relating to my personal traveling. And Chair, I did travel to India at my own personal instance and at my own personal cost. I did travel to Dubai, I don't remember many times, at my own personal capacity. I did travel to many other places in my capacity as the chairperson of the board. And relating to information which allegedly was sent by either myself or my office, I can tell you, Chair, that I have never sent information to people who were not supposed to see the information. I've never sent information to anybody who had no interest in the information. So the information that they're referring to, which relates to pre-notification, the PFMA application, that information would have been sent to Salim Issa, who has been at many times operating from the Gupta premises. So as far as my relationship is concerned with the Gupta family, I've known the Gupta family in my capacity as a ministerial advisor. And at that stage, I was advising a minister in communication. And of course, the Guptas were running the TNA. They were stakeholder in the industry. There were, of course, a lot of discussion between, the government and the stakeholders time and time. So,
which minister was that? Which minister was that one? The Minister of Communication that you are advising, who was it?
Chair, this was in 2014. This was around 2014.
Would it have been Ms. Faith Mutambi?
Yes, indeed.
Okay,
indeed.
all right.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I've known them in that capacity, and we interacted in that capacity. That is the relationship I had. And beyond that, of course, I had relationships with a number of the stakeholders that I related to them arising from that. So in conclusion of what I've just said, just to put the record clear, the board members that I served with, they have served Dinell, and they've given everything, and they've served with integrity. There is nothing that they have done which amount to any element of state capture, as it is, put. They've suspended, yes, but they've suspended on the basis of the facts before them. They've settled, yes, on the basis of the facts before them. They have decided, of course, to proceed with decisions to enter the new markets on the basis of the information which was presented to them. Nobody told them what decision to make. I think, of course, the Commission has got access to, to the records, because you see, a board of directors mainly acts through the meeting, through the resolution, through the deliberation, and it is very clear there that certain considerations were made which are black and white, which can be ascertained, and those were the basis of those decisions, nothing more. And Chair, just to add, I have traveled to our biggest markets in the Middle East. And I was shocked to see that majority of the people who operate in those defense companies are South Africans. And majority of them worked for Denel. Very competent engineers who go there with the invention mind. So, of course, the intellectual property in this space, it's in the head of an engineer. And the product that they were making that site were actually better than the products that we're making. And those states have got deep pockets. They had new factories. They had new infrastructure. So as a chair, I could see that we had to do something because this, what we called our biggest market, is nothing more than people copying from us, and tomorrow they wouldn't need us. So we tried what we could do to then say we must then get into some new technologies for the company. And there's been a lot of research, and we got into cyberspace and all sorts of things. So we tried to make sure that the ship should not sink. But of course, given the fact that, the sovereign is pressed with a lot of challenges in terms of service delivery issues. So spending money on the defense company becomes not the most priority. And to help the sovereign to still retain some defense capabilities, it means the company must be agile enough and try to take the opportunities. But maybe some of the issues that, of course, you confronted with, Chair, and I must say, in terms of my own experience, the regulatory framework in which Denel operates in, it is not good for the company because the company competes at a global space. Locally, it has got no, there is no preference that they must be given a contract by South African Defence Force. And if you have a regulatory environment, I think a lot of entrepreneurs will tell you that one of the big enemies of business is rigid regulatory environment. Because business in its nature is opportunities and they arise anytime, and agility is very required. So that has been also a frustration. And if you see maybe someone saying, yeah, but why did you push so hard to do this? We push so hard because we're doing business. We're doing business because opportunities come and go. And we're doing business in a very hard environment. And the other issue, except regulatory framework, state-owned companies are led by politicians. And when I say politicians, I mean executive authorities are politicians who sometimes, with all respect to our politicians, with the good work they do every day, but sometimes political decisions or political interest override commercial interest of a state-owned company. We have experienced that. With respect to everybody else, a fantastic job that the executive authorities do to provide leadership and oversight to these companies. But there's a problem that decisions are taken politically instead of a commercial decision to be taken. So I think, Chair, I can sit here and say a lot, but I think I've given the context in which my board operated, the decision which were linked with the state capture, why were they taken, and the basis upon which they were taken. Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mensah. I just want to say maybe two things arising out of your evidence, because what you have been doing is giving evidence about your experiences and those of your board during your time and your understanding and your perspectives of what happened in regard to certain matters. The one is the one you just mentioned, namely, to what extent politicians, maybe political issues, might sometimes interfere or with commercial decisions or with business at state-owned enterprises. And so that's something that one may need to look at what form it takes and what impact does it have on a business, when does it happen, and so on. A former chairperson of one of the SOEs gave evidence here some weeks back and said to me, I know these politicians, no, these ministers, they like, coming into the SOEs because they look for business opportunities. And he said, I know them, I've, been around, blah, 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 blah. So one doesn't know. What one wishes is that SOEs be run in a manner that would make them sustainable and profitable so that they can, fulfill their roles. But that's the one part. The other part I wanted to mention is, you see, it's a pity that sometimes people don't come to the Commission to give the Commission information about matters that are relevant to the Commission. Because if we get told one side of the story and we never get told the other side or another side, then we'll decide on the basis of one side. We'll make findings on the basis of one side of the story. But we want to hear all sides of the story. Everybody knows how from 2018 I have for a long time been making public announcements to invite everybody who has got information that's relevant to the Commission to please come forward, give us information. Some people did come forward, others didn't come, others came late. So there are those things. So I have no doubt that when the Commission finishes its work, there would still be many people who do have information that should have been given to the Commission, but who didn't come forward, which is unfortunate. But we can only do so much. Now I'm raising that because it's also relevant to your evidence, and because Mr. Saluji gave evidence last year, and you will remember that the Commission wanted to get statements from you and information to hear then the board side of the story. We said, please, here are statements from Mr. Saluji. See what he says about you and the board. Give us your affidavits because we want to hear the whole story. I don't want to go into it, but we struggled. We struggled. Now, of course, you are here now. We are happy that you are here. But the only thing that is unfortunate is if we had got maybe some of the information or your side of the story last year, it could have given us a lot of time to investigate certain matters. When we get it now, we are close to the tail end of our work. Some of the investigators have left. So it might not be so easy to do the kind of investigation that we would have liked to do into some of the matters that you may raise, you see. For example, I may be mistaken, but I don't remember that when Mr. Saluji gave his evidence, he talked about, I may be mistaken, he talked about the issue of the loan that you're talking about, with Netbank?
Yes.
You
yes,
know,
Chair.
which I think you say was at the center of their suspension and so on. Now, he may have spoken, maybe I've forgotten, but it's quite an important matter to look at because it deals with the question of were the suspensions based on allegations of wrongdoing on their part or failure to do their job properly, or were the suspensions based on something else? And the impression one got when evidence was given before and when evidence gets given, you know, recently, is towards the view that it was something else. You see? But if we don't hear your side of the story, we won't hear about those allegations. You see, and we will form whatever view based on what is before us. Whereas if people come forward and say, here is another side of the story, that helps us, because we want to hear all sides of the story. There is no side that we don't want to hear. So you understand that?
With respect, Chair,
Yes.
thank you very much. I do understand, but I think my experience in relation to the Commission, the manner in which people who manage the operations, of course, this has nothing to do with the Chair. It creates an impression of other people are being accused of doing certain things. And, you know, when you start a process by trying to label other people, they, of course, feel insulted, they feel angry, and they don't feel they have to cooperate because they've been already charged. So I think that is the problem that we see playing it out. I think it is the responsibility of many of us who had the opportunities to serve in different capacities to share the experience. And Chair, with respect, I think if that was the approach, I'm speaking for myself, if that was the approach, Chair, I'm more than willing
Yes.
to sit, to debate
Yes.
my experience in terms of the regulatory environment as I experience it, the relationship with our politicians, of which I have respect to them, where I think commercial interests are being sidelined because you know, politicians are politicians. So with that, Chair, I think speaking for myself, I think it's all the basis of an approach. It was not anything, but this has nothing to do with the Chair. And I think a lot of people would want to come and share their experience with the Chair and say, look, this is what I experienced, and this is my encounter, this is the journey I've traveled.
No, that's fine. Thank you, Mr. Mancha. Mr. Kennedy?
Thank you, Chair. Chair, may we start by just requesting your leave to introduce formally into the evidence the affidavits that Mr. Mancha has provided.
Yes.
Mr. Mancha, do you have Denel Bundle 8 in front of you?
Yes.
Sorry, would you just speak into the microphone rather?
Yes, this is bundle 8.
Yes, you have that. Just remember it has to be recorded and transcribed possibly in the future.
Okay.
So please don't just nod. Try and bear in mind that.
Thank you.
If I can take you please to page 330, and the page numbers are printed in black at the top left-hand corner. It's not the pages on the right-hand corner in red. Okay? And I'm simply going to give the last 3 digits of this rather long number, which starts with Denel 08. Have you got page 330?
I do.
And that appears to be what is referred to as a statement, but in fact appears to have been an affidavit. If I can take you to page 336, is that your signature?
Yeah, indeed.
Sorry, there are two signatures. The top signature, is that yours?
Yes, it is. But may I then say something about this affidavit?
Well, let me just complete my questions first before you do that. You signed this in front of a Commissioner of Oaths after taking the affirmation, is that right?
Yes.
Right. What is it you want to raise about the affidavit?
Well, I want to raise an issue just for correction about the breakfast meeting in Melrose. I think I assumed that Stephen Berger was there, but on recollection, he was not there. It was myself, Mr. Saluji, Mr. Ntsepe, and Mr. Isa.
Are you referring to page 331, paragraph 5? Mr.
Yes,
Mancha, you're
yes.
referring to that paragraph?
Yes.
Yes. You've raised this presumably because you have reflected on the correctness of this affidavit and picked up that there may be an error relating to your allegation that Mr. Berger attended the breakfast at Melrose Arch. Is that right?
Well, somebody reminded me when I was asking about that meeting.
I see. So is it incorrect where you said that Mr. Berger also attended that meeting?
Yes.
Okay. So you would need to delete the words "and Mr. Berger." Is that
Yes.
right? May I ask you, with your legal team's assistance, please, would you be willing to sign a further supplementary affidavit to correct that?
Indeed.
Right. And will you provide that to the Commission, please?
Indeed.
And we will then furnish that to the chairperson through the formal processes of having it admitted. Is there any other problem that you have picked up in relation to this affidavit? Have you been through this affidavit in preparation for this hearing together
No.
with your legal team?
No, not really.
I see. You're wanting an opportunity to have read through it because you want to check it now?
No, I think you can take me through it.
Yes. Is there anything else you want to draw the attention to? Because
Yes,
I
I think, Mr. Mancha, Mr. Kennedy seeks to establish whether you are in a position to answer questions based on these affidavits. In other words, you remember what you said, or whether you need to refresh your memory or not.
No, I think the broad
Picture.
thrush
Yeah.
of the affidavit I
Yes.
remember.
Okay.
As I said in my opening, Chair, this is 5 years or something ago.
Yeah.
There could have been other details that
Yeah. No,
are
that's
omitted.
fine. No, that's fine.
I understand that. I'm just trying to go through the formal process of getting you to confirm under oath here that the affidavit is correct. I accept that there may be some details you can't always remember, but that's not my question. The affidavit was signed fairly recently. If we look at page 336, it was signed on the 28th of August 2020. Is that right?
Yes.
Now, you have, to your credit, drawn attention to a point of detail that you felt needs to be corrected, and that's the Melrose Arch breakfast, and that Mr. Berger wasn't in attendance, and we thank you for that. Otherwise, can we take it that you confirm, as you did before a Commissioner of Oaths in August 2020, that the affidavit is true and correct?
Yes.
Right. Please don't sit too far away from the microphone, Mr. Mancha.
Yes, when you are too far, it won't be recorded. Your answers won't be recorded.
I just have a little bit of problem with
Eyesight.
yeah.
Is it the light or
No,
just eyesight?
I think it's just the sight is fading.
Or is it too dark there?
No, it is. I can't read when it is.
Oh, okay.
I can understand the documents have to be a bit of a distance from you. Can I perhaps suggest respectfully that yes, you either move the microphone or move yourself And if you need to put the documents above the desk, then perhaps that will help.
Or when you answer, you can move forward a little bit and then move back. Okay, all right.
All right, thank you. So do you confirm that the affidavit, subject to the correction about Mr. Berger and the Melrose Arch breakfast, the contents are true and correct? Mr. Mancha, you're an attorney. Is there difficulty with the question? I'm asking you, can you confirm that the contents of this affidavit are true and correct?
Yes, I'm actually trying to read to see if there's any other detail that I remember.
Yeah, maybe we should adjourn for 10 minutes or so. I don't know. Do you need time to refresh?
I thought, Chair, I could read it as is.
As we go along?
As we go along, rather than to waste time.
Well, as the only concern is whether that's not going to slow us down anyway. I think maybe let's take tea break. Let's take tea break. What do you think, Mr. Kennedy?
Yes, thank you, Chair. It's a pity that he didn't read it beforehand, but be that as it may. Yes, perhaps these affidavits are extremely brief.
Yes.
I think there are 3 affidavits he will need to read. They're all,
Yes.
the next one is, for example, a page and a half, and the next one a few pages. Perhaps we can
Yes.
take a tea adjournment and he can read through it
Yeah.
now. Thank you.
Is 15 minutes, 20 minutes fine, Mr. Mancha, to go through them?
Indeed, Chair.
It is?
Indeed.
Okay, well, let's make it 20 minutes. That takes us to 25 past. My watch says about 5 past.
No, 25 past. Thank you, Chair.
Yeah, okay, we adjourn. Okay, you were able to go through the affidavits, Mr. Manje?
Yes, Chair, thank you.
Okay, all right. Thank you. Mr. Kennedy?
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for doing so, Mr. Munchak. So if we're looking at page 330, I'm sorry, just give me a second. Yes, page 330. Have you been through that affidavit?
Yes, I've been through this page.
And apart from the correction you've already made reference to on the next page, paragraph 5, to Mr. Berger having to be deleted there, apart from that, can you confirm now under oath that the contents of this affidavit are true and correct?
I just wish to point on specific paragraph.
Yes.
I would
Can I just so that we have some sort of framework for how we're going to deal with this? Are you going to add to something?
Yes, I'm going to.
Okay, I prefer you not to add to anything at this stage.
No, I'm not adding.
Oh, I thought you said yes when I asked you.
I'm just want to make correction on.
Make a correction, that's
Yes.
fine. Yes. Paragraph?
I've already indicated paragraph 5.
Yes, we've dealt with that. What else?
And then I have got paragraph 7 again.
Paragraph 7, yes?
Yes, of course, it's many years ago. The correct position is who called who, I have no recollection. And then I have paragraph,
Sorry, before you move from that, I don't understand. You said you wanted to make a correction rather than adding something. Is there a correction here? Is there something wrong here?
well,
I'm sorry. Maybe let's do it this way, Mr. Kennedy and Mr. Mancha. Maybe let us do it this way. You ask Mr. Mancha whether once we have confirmed his signature and that he deposed to the affidavit before a commission of oaths, you ask him whether the contents are true and correct. Then he can say, Mr. Mancha, you can say they are true and correct except certain corrections that you will make in due course during your evidence. Then when Mr. Kennedy deals with that, then you can say, in that paragraph, here is what should be corrected, and this is what it should say.
thank you, Chair.
I think let's do it that way. Then that way we can get the affidavits admitted, and then we start with questions.
Yes, we can then make some progress. Thank you, Chair.
Yeah.
Thank you for the guidance.
Yeah.
Mr. Munch, are you happy to proceed on that basis?
Indeed.
Right, so subject to any changes you may want to indicate in the course of your oral evidence, at this stage, are you happy to confirm that subject to that, the contents are true and correct?
Indeed.
Right, thank you. Chair, may we then ask leave to have this affidavit at page 330 admitted as an exhibit in bundle Donnell 8 as exhibit W22.1.
The affidavit stroke statement of Mr. Lukisani Daniel Mancha, starting at page 330, is admitted as exhibit W22.1.
Thank you, Chair. May we then proceed, Mr. Muncher, to the next affidavit in the bundle. It's at page 337 to 338. It's a two-page affidavit. Is that your signature as the first signature on page 338?
Correct, Chairperson.
And that was signed in front of a Commissioner of Oaths on the 28th of August 2020, correct?
Correct, Chairperson.
Have you been during the tea adjournment through this affidavit?
And I did look at it.
Are there any corrections you want to draw attention to now, or will you deal with anything further in the course of your oral evidence that you'd like to?
I would deal with correction.
You'll deal with corrections later. Subject to that, do you confirm that the contents are true and correct?
Indeed.
Right, and your third affidavit, I believe, is at page 342.
Well, you don't want us to
I beg your pardon.
finish
Thank
with
you.
this?
Quite so, Chair. Thank you.
Yeah.
May we ask then leave to have that admitted as Exhibit W22.2.
The statement stroke affidavit of Mr. Lukisani Daniel Mancha, starting at page 337, is admitted as Exhibit W22.2.
Thank you, Chair. And there's a third affidavit, Mr. Mancha, that you'll find at page 342. At page 345, it appears to be your signature at the top. Is that correct?
340?
5. 345 appears to be your signature at the top. Three, 4, 5, Mr. Mancha. Do you have 345 on the top left?
Look at
Okay,
the
I can
black
see it.
numbers.
Is that your signature at the top, Mr. Mancha?
Indeed.
Thank you. Again, subject to the same qualification that you may want to add or correct at a later stage. Subject to that, you confirm the
Indeed.
contents of this affidavit.
Indeed.
Thank you. Chair, may we then ask formally for leave to admit this affidavit from page 342 in bundle 8 as exhibit W22.3.
The affidavit stroke statement of Mr. Lukisani Daniel Mancha, starting at page 342, is admitted as exhibit W22.3.
Thank you, Chair. Now, Mr. Mancha, in the opening statement that you gave, you indicated that at a certain stage in 2015 you were appointed as chairperson of the board of Denel, correct?
Correct, Chair.
And you served for how long?
I resigned around 2018, I think it was towards the end of February.
Your appointment, can I take you in this bundle to page 422? This is Minister Lynn Brown's public statement relating to your appointment as part of the new board. You have that?
420?
2. I do. So it was on the 24th of July 2015, the Public Enterprises Minister Lynn Brown made the following, made a public announcement where she says, following cabinet approval, she's rotated the board of Denel. Mr. Daniel Mancha is appointed as a non-executive director and as the chairperson of the board with effect from 24 July 2015 for a 3-year period. So you would ordinarily, in terms of the 3-year appointment, have carried on until the 23rd of July 2018, is that right?
Correct.
But you didn't serve out, sorry, may I just ask you please not to sit too far back from the microphone? Thank you. I know these things can be a bit tedious, but I'm afraid I just have to remind you, otherwise we could have problems with recording.
Thank you, Councillor.
Thank you very much. So did you resigned, I think you said in February 2018, is that right?
I think so.
Right. So you didn't serve out the full period of the 3 years, you resigned a few months before the end of that three-year period, is that right?
Correct.
And why was that?
Well, personal reasons.
There were personal reasons.
Yes.
Then Lynn Brown, the minister, then sets out at the foot of the page a brief summary of the profiles of the non-executive directors being as follows. Mr. Mancha obtained a B. Juris in 1991 and LLB in 1993, both from the University of Venda. He's an attorney who's acquired valuable experience over the years in corporate finance, transactional advising, business management, commercial law, media and communication law, administrative and constitutional law. Does that accurately provide the facts as to, very briefly, your background?
Well, Chairperson, this is not the statement from me, this is what they wrote.
Yes, I'm asking you whether it's accurate.
I cannot comment on that.
You can't comment on whether she has been correct in saying, for example, you've got a B. Juris and an LLB? Surely you would know.
No, of course I do have.
Well, is there anything wrong in what she has said?
Well, I don't want to comment on the statement issued by a department. Yes, I have got experience in these kind of things.
These kind of things?
Yes.
Right. And in addition to what she has set out, of course, you'd acted as an advisor to the then Communication Minister, Ms. Faith Mutambi, correct? You told the Chair
Correct.
that earlier, right? It refers to you having, apart from your experience
I'm sorry, Mr. Kennedy. Well, I'm not sure, Mr. Mencha, whether there was any misunderstanding between yourself and Mr. Kennedy in terms of what he sought to establish. I understood you, Mr. Kennedy, to seek to establish whether Mr. Manchawa was confirming that what Minister Brown told the public about him was correct.
Yes, I did ask that question.
Yes. Now, that may be important, Mr. Manchawa, because this was a statement where you were being appointed to a state-owned entity. The public wants to know the people who are being appointed, and the minister tells the public certain things about those people, and the public might say, well, those people are experienced, so we have comfort, or they might say, but these people have no experience. So I think it's important for you to be able to say if there is something that's not accurate that the minister said in the statement about you, or if you say, no, there's nothing inaccurate, then it's fine. But I think the public would be concerned if the minister has told them who you are and what experience you have, and then you are not able to either confirm or say, no, she got something wrong.
I think it's correct.
Correct. Okay,
Yeah.
all right.
Right, thank you. Of course, this was a very brief summary of some of the main points. No doubt there are other facts relating to your experience and so forth. One being that you had been the advisor to the previous Communications Minister, Faith Mutambi. Were you the legal advisor or a special advisor or a policy advisor to Minister Mutambi?
Well, I was appointed a legal advisor, but when you advise legally, there are policy matters, there are political matters. So I advise across the board.
I see. And just by way of background, have you ever previously managed a commercial business or a state-owned business or served as chairperson of the board of any such business?
No, I've been always managing my own business.
Your own businesses?
Yes.
Meaning what, your attorney's firm or commercial businesses?
No, my tennis practice.
Right.
Yes.
Okay. And then she refers to some of your areas of expertise, such as communication law, media law, administrative and constitutional law. Have you also had experience in labor law? Have you also had experience in labor law?
Chairperson, a lot.
A lot. Thank you. Right. While we're at this page, I'd just like to note something that Minister Brown has referred to earlier. She's in the fourth paragraph, it says, in quotes, I would like to thank the outgoing board led by acting chairperson Martie Janse, should be, I think, van Rensburg, for an outstanding job. They handed over a company that is truly on a path to positive sustainability. I commend them for their professionalism in ensuring the handover report was of such a quality that it will be a critical guide to the new board. Now, you did not serve on the previous board when it was chaired on an acting basis by Ms. Janse van Rensburg, is that right?
Correct.
So you arrived as a new broom, as it were, in Denel, as the chairperson at Denel.
Correct.
There were some others that had crossed over from the previous board to the new board. The Minister Brown refers to that earlier on. It's actually Mr. Johannes Motseki being reappointed for purposes of continuity. So you arrive as somebody new in the organization of Denel. Are you able to tell the chair, please, what overall, what was the state of Denel, both as a business in general, and particularly in relation to financing when you took over as its board chairperson in 2015?
Chairperson, I think I've already alluded to it. When the new board, which I was part of, arrived, Denel was already a sinking ship. Denel was already owing creditors, mainly small and medium enterprise, over 200 million. And these invoices were more than 200 days. Denel at that stage was owing Nedbank and ABSA over probably, I think it was 4.7 billion. Denel facilities with financial institutions, which was mainly used for issuing guarantees in contracts, was at that stage 8 billion plus, and Denel was left with around 2 billion. So the financial state was dire at the time, compounded with a transaction that Denel has spent 855 million, of which Denel did not have that amount. So it was catastrophic.
Thank you. Now may I take you in the same bundle, bundle 8, to page 330, which is your first affidavit.
I'm sorry, Mr. Kennedy. It will be important in due course to compare Mr. Mancha's description of Denel's position when the board that he chaired came in with, for example, what I was told by, I think, Mr. Mhlontlo, because I did ask him what the position of Denel financially was when he and the other executives were suspended. Of course, they were suspended within about 3 months or so after the new board had come in.
Yes.
So it would be important to, in due course, to compare and see if it's the same picture that emerges.
We'll do so. Thank you, Chair.
Yeah, okay.
Mr. Mhlontlo, I beg your pardon, Mr. Mancha, if I can direct your attention, please, to page 330. That's your first affidavit. That you signed, as we saw, on the 28th of August 2020. Was that at the request of the Commission? Did you sign the affidavit at the request of the Commission?
Yes.
Right. And that is after, as I understand it, the Commission sent you a Rule 33 notice directing your attention to what Mr. Saluji had said in his affidavits. Correct?
Yes.
Right, thank you. And if we look at page 330, paragraph 3 actually makes that point. I've read the statements of Mr. Rio Saluji and wish to respond to the allegations he made relating to me. And then you do make a response. And then, for example, at page 331, you refer, add paragraphs 89 to 90. That's a reference to the paragraphs 89 to 90 of Mr. Saluji's affidavit, correct?
89 to 90?
Yes.
Okay, yes.
Sorry, I'm not sure that you followed the question. We're at page 331, correct?
Yes.
In your affidavit, this is what you signed. You say 4, add paragraphs 89 to 90. Do you see the heading? And
Yes.
you say, I have no knowledge of this allegation. I'm simply asking you, when you refer add paragraph 89 to 90, as we as attorneys like you and counsel like me use the terminology add paragraph, it means referring to paragraph 89 to 90, correct?
Yes.
And it's 89 to 90, I'm simply wanting to establish. That is 89 to 90 as numbered in Mr. Saluji's affidavit, correct?
Yes.
Right. And so it goes on for the rest of your affidavit. So, and the Commission thanks you, or the legal team thanks you for providing this affidavit in response to the Rule 3 notice. And then if I can take you, please, then at page 335 of the same affidavit, you're referring to a further statement of Mr. Saluji, and you give your response to that. Correct?
Yes.
Right. Then your next affidavit, we'll get back to the content, some of the contents of that at a later stage. I'm just getting out of the way just the sequence of how it was done and yeah, the formalities. 337 is your next very brief affidavit, again also signed on the 28th of August 2020, and this time in paragraph 3 you say, I've read the statement of Mr. Khatatso Klakudi and wish to respond to the allegations he made relating to me. So is that the same as the last affidavit? Your attention was drawn by the Commission to another affidavit that came from Mr. Klakudi, and you were asked to respond to that, and you did so.
Correct.
Right. Then we have at page 339 a letter from the Commission itself in the person of its Secretary, Professor Musala. You see that at page 341?
I do.
And that was dated as recently as 7th of October 2020, so about 5 or 6 weeks ago. And that requested you to provide, by the specified date, you'll see in paragraph 2, an affidavit to respond to the questions set out in paragraph 4 below and give your full version in relation thereto. And then there are a number of questions set out at page 340, paragraph 4A to G. Do you see that?
Yes.
And just by way of example, paragraph A says, you're requested to give your full version justifying the decisions that were taken by the board to A, suspend Ria Saluji, who was the CEO, Fikile Mshlontlo, who was the CFO, and Elizabeth Africa, who was the company secretary. And then likewise in E, for example, for the decision, what motivated you to form Denel Asia, and F, to partner with VR Leisure, and G, to litigate against Treasury. So they raised these specific questions.
Yes.
Is that right? And you responded to that in your latest affidavit at page 342. Is that right?
Yes.
And we see at page 345 that was signed by you in front of the Commission of Oaths on the 14th of October 2020, which is about a week after the letter was dated.
Yes.
Right, so it was specifically a response to that request. Correct?
Yes.
While we're at it, you were asked, of course, to provide a full version to justify the decisions. Now, when we look at the affidavit at page 342, am I correct in suggesting to you that this is a very brief affidavit?
Correct.
Yes. And it gives very little detail, not so? For example, let's take you to page 343, paragraph 7. You were asked to justify the decision relating to the formation of Denel Asia, and you simply say it's set out in both the PFMA section 54.2 pre-notification and section 51.1G. You had nothing to add to those documents, is that right?
Correct.
Yes. And then you attached, helpfully you attached the documents that you referred to as annexes A and B to your affidavit, correct?
Correct.
And we find those from page 347, is that right?
Correct.
Now, an indulgence was granted to you at your and your learned counsel's request, and with the approval of the chair, to allow you to give an opening statement, which you did over some fair period this morning, and we're grateful to you for providing detail to the Commission. What I just want to raise very briefly with you is the concern that the learned chair raised with you earlier, which is there any particular reason why the considerable detail you've given to us at your own request in your detailed, fairly lengthy opening statement was not provided in the form of the affidavits when you were specifically requested to give not just a version, but a full version? Any reason for that?
I think, Chair, I've already responded to the chairperson that the approach that investigators and officials of the Commission they use when it comes to people like myself who were in the service of the country and that we have acquired certain information and we should provide the Commission with the information. I think, as I explained, the approach of trying to accuse certain people of being either enablers of state capture, either being involved with the state capture, because either by association or otherwise, it doesn't send incentive to people to come and talk. Because the question that Council is asking me, you would assume that the Commission is obviously very conscious with its own time frames. You would assume that if, say, for example, these are actions of the board acts through its meetings, and the actions of the board by law are recorded in the minutes and in the resolutions. So you would expect investigators to ask questions because they cannot find the answers. But when you are being asked things that if it is being investigated, it should be easy for the investigator to find the answer. I must say, Chair, I'm actually indebted with the explanation that you have given to me. But of course, unfortunately, Chair, we're not dealing with the chairperson. We're dealing with the people who are employed to do this kind of work. And indeed, if the approach from the beginning is what the chairperson has explained to me, and what my, council is conveying now, it would have been a different approach, completely.
May I take you, Mr. Mancha, and I'm encouraged to hear that you feel a measure of reassurance from the remarks made by the learned chairperson in that regard. But may I just ask you to look again at the letter, the recent letter at page 339. Page 339 says the investigations of the Commission reveal that you were a member of the Board of Directors of Denel, SOC Limited. Now that is not an accusation, that's simply a statement of fact, which is either correct or not. Correct?
It's correct.
And then the Secretary of the Commission, Professor Musala, says, paragraph 2, I write to you at the direction of the Commission's legal team in order to request that you furnish the Commission on or before Wednesday, 14 October, with an affidavit in which you respond to the questions set out in paragraph 4 below and give your full version in relation thereto. If you require assistance, etc., we don't need to go through that. There was a suggestion that if you needed assistance, that would be provided by the Commission at no cost to you. And then the questions are put. Paragraph 4, in your capacity as a director of Denel, at Denel, you're requested to give your full version justifying the decisions that were taken by the board in 2015 and 2016 too, and then we see A to G, and I gave you some examples of that. I don't think we need to deal with the remainder of the letter in detail. It indicates to you the legal basis on which it said that the Commission is entitled to issue a directive and or summons any person to submit an affidavit or appear before the Commission, etc. And it gives the deadline. There's nothing in this letter, would you concede, that says the following you've already been found guilty of something, or that following findings have already been made. Not so. It simply is neutral. It is saying the Commission would like you to answer certain questions. Correct?
Well, with respect, Chairperson, boards act through records.
I'm sorry, just speak up, please.
Boards act through records. Chairperson, I don't want to, I'm not here to justify anything. I'm here to explain what has happened, what I've experienced. And when a question comes to me to say justify the decisions of the board are contained in minutes, in the board resolutions, and it is simple and easy for the Commission to understand the basis upon which all these decisions were taken. And that's sorry, Chair. That's why, for me, because these were not my personal decisions, it was fair enough to refer to those documents which has contained these decisions. It was not to say I'm not cooperating. If you ask me a question in my capacity as a chair, I will then give you the actions of the board which are contained in the minutes and in the resolution. So that's why I attached this document, because then you see this was the reasoning and that's why this decision was taken. If council wants to get to a point that I was not cooperating, that I reject is not correct. I've already expressed to the chairperson that the message out there, not only to me, but to many other people, it's different. It's not the chairperson who is communicating with us. It's not the chairperson who is telling us this. But the message out there is accusation and lambast people as enablers of state capture and given all sorts of names. But if the idea from council is to say you were not cooperating, that is not correct.
I was simply asking you to look at the document in light of your earlier evidence that people had made findings against you, that you had been tainted by state capture, and the simple point is that's not apparent from this letter, not so.
I think, Chair, I think I've already explained myself.
Thank you.
The reason why I reacted the way I've reacted. I don't think I have to repeat, because otherwise I'll be repeating what I've answered.
No, we're not asking you to repeat anything. Please don't, Mr. Manso. We have precious little time, and we'd like to move on. So if you want to say anything you haven't said already, you're welcome to do so, subject to the Chair's guidance. But I certainly don't want you to repeat anything. Thank you. Can I now take you to page 321? This is a further letter from an official of the Commission. This is dated earlier than the one we looked at earlier, and that is the 19th of February 2020. Do you see that?
I do.
And that was issued on the following page, 322, by Ms. Bridget Shabalala, the then acting secretary of the Judicial Commission, correct?
I do.
Did you receive this letter?
Yes, the letter was received.
Yes. You received it in February, did you?
Yeah, yes, it was received in February.
Right. And there too, the Commission's official then says, in paragraph 2, this letter serves to confirm that the Commission is looking into allegations of state capture, corruption and fraud involving several public entities and other organs of state pursuant to the Commission's terms of reference. As part of the investigations into the affairs of Denel SOC Limited and the greater scope of the state capture inquiry, we are investigating various matters involving yourself. Would you agree that they're not saying we have made any findings? They're simply investigating allegations that have been made by others, correct?
Correct.
Yes. And would you appreciate, particularly as an experienced and qualified attorney with knowledge of constitutional, administrative law and the like, that of course as a matter of law, nobody can make findings that have any binding force in any event in relation to the Commission's work other than the learned chairperson of the Commission, correct?
That's correct.
Right. And then the acting secretary says this, paragraph 4, we've compiled a list of questions attached here to as Annexure A, which you're required to respond to in the form of an affidavit detailing information required, including supporting documents where possible. And it says the Commission urgently requires the affidavit to be delivered within 10, I see it says 10 in the word, and then in numerals in brackets 15 calendar days. Be that as it may. What then follows at at page 323 is an 8-page, so it's in fact a 6-page document that runs to page 329, setting out a number of questions, correct?
Indeed.
And you received these questions at the time you received the letter that came with it?
Yes.
Right. And I'm just going to look at the headings so that we see what the questions relate to. Paragraph 1 on page 323, it's the Guptas and Associates relationship. And then it says, for example, who introduced you to the Gupta family and what was the purpose of the introduction? The next topic at page 324, paragraph 2, is the Denel VR laser joint venture. And as an example, 2.1, how and when did you become aware of the Denel Asia joint venture? Based on your knowledge, who introduced the idea or concept to the Denel board, provide evidence. And then on page 328, there's reference in paragraph 3 to the Pakistan deal and paragraph 4 to the Chad deal. Now, did you reply to this?
Chairperson, I did not reply. It was purely a matter of oversight. The moment in time when this letter was received by my office, there were very serious matters that I was handling for other people that relates to the work of this commission. It was an oversight on my side. The letter received, the letter is put in the file, and at this time there were matters that...
Sorry, please speak into the microphone.
There were matters that, of course, preoccupied, and it was an oversight on my part, and I omitted. And to that chairperson, of course, I'm sorry that there was an oversight on my part, and I did not respond to this.
So we shouldn't read into it any deliberate refusal to cooperate?
Not at all, Chairperson. I think the next minute I got into this is when now the bundles are being set.
Yes.
And as preparing with my legal team, of course, we then picked this was not answered. But as I explained, Chairperson, my apologies to that, but it was clearly oversight. Sometimes we forget about our own personal matters and focus on ourselves on other matters. And this was a very difficult time in my life. Yes. When that was received.
Now, I understand and I empathize as a legal practitioner. It is true that sometimes we tend to give more time and attention to clients' interests than sometimes our own. But this wasn't something like a plumber's bill that you had to pay, although plumbers are also important to deal with. This was something very serious that came on behalf of the chairperson of a Judicial Commission of Inquiry, appointed no less than by the President, and relating to huge matters of public importance. It just seems to me a little problematic that you confirm having received this and overlooking it.
Well, Chairperson, I can't say more than the apology that I've given and the reasons for me not reacting to that.
Okay,
I can't
thank
say
you.
More than.
All right, thank you, Mr. Muncher. Can I just, before we leave this, were you dealing with clients in your professional capacity as an attorney to assist them in relation to processes of this commission concerning those clients?
Well, amongst other things, yes.
Right. Okay, thank you. Now, is it also correct that we as the legal team requested you to cooperate with the legal team in preparation for this hearing by consulting with us?
Well, I got that request, Chairperson, true, but I'm sufficiently represented a very senior attorney on my side and a very experienced senior counsel. My attorney responded to say, no, whatever you want, you can tell us, and then we can look at that. There was no idea of trying not to cooperate. There have been correspondences between my attorney and the commission as far as that request is concerned.
Yes. I'd like to ask you one final point about the level of cooperation or the level at which you may have cooperated or not cooperated. And that is this: when you look at these facts, you don't respond at all due to an oversight, you say, to a very detailed list of questions, which as the chairperson, dealing with matters which the chairperson has already referred to as something that the Commission would have welcomed if you'd assisted from the beginning. It could have saved some time. Secondly, the fact that when you did cooperate, and we thank you for that by providing the 3 affidavits that we have taken you to, they're extremely brief, in fact very sparse. I can give you as an example at the other end of the spectrum, for example, a witness who testified yesterday, Mr. Burger, who himself has been the subject of a number of allegations, and he felt he is innocent and wanted to clear his name. He put in an affidavit, I believe it was the main affidavit, was 188 pages, just the affidavit, let alone many pages of annexures. That may be an extreme example because others have given more like 30, 40 pages or whatever. But the third point is that when we as a legal team asked to consult with you, you didn't consult. It is true that your attorney wrote back, did give a response, at least that wasn't overlooked, and indicated if there was anything specific we could raise it with them, but not to have a consultation. It just seems to... Sorry, I'll give you a chance to respond. May I just finish the question? Can I just suggest to you that unlike many other witnesses, not all...
My apologies, Councillor.
Not all witnesses in this commission, both in relation to the Donnell stream and other streams, the commission has had a range of varying responses or non-responses from witnesses. It just seems that your response appears to have been very patchy. Please respond.
Chairperson, what is happening, I think Mr. Beggar alluded in his affidavit. What these investigators who are employed by the Commission, they interrogate people to accept whatever narrative they are coming up with. So I, of course, do not want to subject myself in an unfair process. It is not correct that there was no reason for me not to consult with the Commission. The reasons given by the Commissions were not such that we can form a conclusion that, look, the Commission is out here, it's asking us this information because of very good reasons. So there's been malafide, there's been people being put under very serious interrogation. And of course, I didn't want to subject myself to that. I've got a legal team which is capable of, whether it's 500 pages of an affidavit, we can do. But in conclusion, Chair, if all of this is meant to show that I disrespected this Commission, that is not true. I cooperated to an extent on the basis of the information that I have. I did not, of course, want to expose myself to what I regard as unfair tactics by some of the Commission investigators. So I didn't want to get involved. But at no stage, as I said, Chair, when you explained to me, and if that was the message that everyone out there is getting, as the Chair has explained, we would have been the first day, came here with loads and loads of things and say, Chairperson, I want to share this with you. So again, if Council is trying to say, I did not cooperate with the Commission, it is not correct. On the face of other documents that I might not have responded to, I profoundly apologize, Chairperson. Here I am. I'm here to engage. I'm here to explain the part of my board. I'm here to explain my part. I'm here to share whatever experience that I have that might be relevant to what the Commission is doing. And I'm here in good faith. That's what I can say, Chairperson.
Well, on behalf of the legal team, may we say we commend you at least for coming today, and we thank you for that. And can you confirm that you will cooperate fully with the questioning that we are going to put to you?
Well, with respect, Chairperson, I mean, I don't think I have to answer that.
Okay. When you refer to interrogation, of course, that's a term that, for example, in the apartheid era had terrible connotations of torture and so forth. You, in fact, have never been interviewed by the investigators, not so?
Yeah, but...
Is that correct?
It is correct.
So you haven't actually been interrogated. In fact, you said you didn't want to subject yourself to interrogation. Correct?
But yes, I've read the evidence of people who have been subjected, like Baker, who describe it.
Yes, but that's not your own personal knowledge, is it?
Well, I wouldn't, it's not my personal knowledge, but he wouldn't have said that if that was not correct.
And just a final point on this, the request for the consultation that I was referring to earlier that was made by the legal team was not made by the investigators. There's an investigation team and a legal team. In fact, that will be clear, if not to your own legal team, it would have been clear very easily from any casual look at the Commission's website. Now, we were the ones, as the legal team, asking you to cooperate by way of a consultation, which didn't take place. So surely any perceived heavy-handedness on the part of investigators that you yourself had not personally received should be surely irrelevant to a legal team. Three members of the bar wanting to consult with you. And instead we are simply told in an email, well, if you want to raise anything specifically, do it by way of email, but we're not going to join you in a consultation, even if, as we permitted, they had come along to the consultation. We were quite happy. We've had plenty of consultations with various witnesses where they have been accompanied by their legal representatives, and we've heard out the legal representatives if they had any difficulties. It seems to us as a legal team to be a little disappointing and concerning that the attitude on your part has been so resistant and so suspicious about the Commission and its work.
Well, Chairperson, I can't say more than what I've said.
All right, thank you.
I've cooperated to an extent where I thought my legal position is, and I have not obstructed the work of this Commission. I'm here. I'm here to explain what I know to the Commission. I've already told you, Chairperson, that the manner in which things have been done is such that people resent it because either lack of the reasons or a proper explanation why certain things should happen. So I don't think I should come here and try to go to those things. It suffices, Chairperson, to say I've been here also representing other people. So I'm not saying I do not recognize the Commission or undermining the authority of the Commission or the Chairperson. I've represented people in this Commission. I'm still representing people in this Commission. And there have been affidavits we have been sending, there have been correspondence that they've been sending in my capacity as an attorney. So there is no anything. If I disagree with a request, Chairperson, and we look at the request, and by the way, for a legal team to be in this Commission, somebody has to pay it. For a legal team to be in consultation with a Commission legal advisors, somebody has to pay it. So that cannot be used to say I'm obstructive or I'm not cooperating. So I can't say more than what I've explained, Chairperson.
All right, thank you, Mr. Mancha. May we now deal with some of the events that took place in relation to your chairpersonship of the board of Denel. If we can take you to one of your affidavits, we can take you to page 331. You there are dealing, as we've established already, with a response to various statements made by Mr. Saluji in his affidavit. And what you say, if I may quote into the record, paragraph 6, you say, I was appointed by the then Cabinet of the Republic of South Africa as a chairperson, and I deny that I was appointed to capture Denel for the benefit of the Gupta family. Long before my appointment as the board chairperson, Mr. Saluji had already signed an agreement on behalf of presumably Denel to partner with the VR Laser, a company associated with the Gupta family. Now there, are you referring, I beg your pardon, to the partnership between Denel and VR Laser in relation to the Asia deal? Is that right?
No.
What are you referring to there?
Well, Chairperson, what I'm referring here is VR Laser had already signed an agreement or a memorandum with Denel, and VR Laser was already involved in Webster project, which was like, is it 11
I'm sorry,
billion?
involved with? Just please try and speak up a bit.
The South African Defence Force appointed Denel to execute a project called Webster.
Yes.
And this was, of course, long before my appointment.
So are you referring to the contract? There's been a great deal of evidence we don't need to cover again, unless it's necessary. There were 3 contracts that we've been dealing with primarily in evidence the past few weeks. The one is the Hoefyster platform hulls contract. The second was a single supplier contract between DLS and VR Laser. And the third was a similar single supplier contract between DVS and VR Laser. You're aware of those 3 contracts?
Yes.
Right. Are you referring here to the agreement relating to the Hoefyster platform hulls?
I'm referring here to the first agreement.
Yes, which one?
That I have been told. The first agreement which Denel has entered with VR.
Yes, which one does that relate to of the 3, Mr. Mancha? Try and help me.
Well, I think, Council, if we take the sequence of this relationship between Denel and VR Laser,
yes,
you will then see that the first agreement which was signed between VR Laser and, sorry, Chairperson, between VR Laser and Denel was signed sometime before our appointment. I'm referring to that first agreement which Denel and VR signed.
Right.
That's the agreement I'm referring to.
I fully understand that. I'm simply quickly trying to get to the point. Was that the agreement, the first agreement that related to the Hoefyster platform hulls? Is that what you're referring to? That's my understanding of the facts, but it's your evidence, not mine. So if I'm wrong, the answer is no, it's XYZ. If the answer is yes, the answer is yes. Is it the platform hulls contract or is it the single supplier contract?
Well, my understanding of the agreement which was signed, it was a relationship agreement, partnership agreement. Yes, it covered the Webster project. This is my understanding as we entered into the company.
And when you entered into the company, you're saying that had already been concluded some time before.
Yes, indeed.
And we're in agreement with you. The Hoefyster contract was signed in 2014 before you started in July 2015. Right, thank you. Now, when you say you were appointed as chairperson by the then Cabinet of the Republic, that was when the Cabinet was chaired by the then President, Mr. Jacob Zuma, correct?
Yeah, President Zuma, yes.
Yes. Now, reference has been made to the fact that, and if it's not a fact, you must correct it, please, that at a certain stage you have acted or may still be acting for former President Zuma, is that correct, as an attorney?
Well, I think it's a public knowledge.
So you confirm it?
Of course, it's public knowledge.
Right. Were you acting as former President Zuma as his attorney at this stage when you were appointed as the chairperson of Denel?
No.
Not. When did that come about?
Well, I acted for former president as from 2018, if I remember.
2018.
Yes.
So that was some years after you were appointed as chairperson of the Denel board.
In fact, after I've left the board.
After you'd left the board, right. And that was in February that you left,
Yes.
2018, right. Did you know the former President Zuma before your appointment?
Well, knowing him how?
Or in any way? You
Well,
weren't as his attorney, did you know him socially
Of
or
course,
through business?
I knew President Zuma. I had no any other business to do with him.
I see. And what was the nature of your knowing him? Was it a social contact or business contact?
Well, I met the president in political meetings,
Right.
and yeah, that was it.
Okay. And then former President Zuma's son, Duduzane, have you acted as his attorney at
No.
any stage? Not at all?
No.
Okay, thank you. All right, now I'd like you to please then refer to your paragraph 7 at page 331. You say, I did not request to meet Mr. Saluji. I did not direct him that the meeting would take place at the Gupta residence. My recollection of the event is that Mr. Essa convened the meeting and he requested me to attend. Now this is referring to evidence that Mr. Saluji gave previously relating to a particular meeting at the Gupta residence in the suburb of Saxonwold. Now, do you confirm that you went to a meeting at the Gupta residence in Saxonwold?
Well, Chairperson, firstly, let me correct the wording of this statement.
Yes, this
Of
is
your affidavit?
this was the
Yeah.
paragraph you wanted to correct.
Yes.
Right.
Who requested who, Chairperson? I do not recall. I will make a supplementary affidavit on that. It's quite many years ago. Whether I attended this meeting, yes, I did. I attended this meeting at the Gupta's residence.
All right, thank you. So when you said in your affidavit, I did not request to meet Mr. Saluji, is it possible that you may have, you just can't recall?
Of course, it might have been possible that I'm the one who conveyed
Okay,
the meeting to him, or he's the one who conveyed the meeting to him,
Fine.
or Mr. Issa could have been the one who conveyed the meeting.
okay, thank you. At this stage, were you already the chairperson of Denel?
At this stage, I think I was.
I see. So then I'd like to go back right to the very beginning. Before you became chairperson, did you know Mr. Saluji at all?
No, I didn't know Mr. Saluji.
Did you meet him for the first time when you became chairperson?
Well, I think when we were in London and when we were trying to share experiences, we then got to a possibility that we could have met each other around 1992 in a particular political event.
Right.
So when I was sharing my recollection of the event, so he also described his and said I was there. And there is a high probability the person I've met him in 1992 is him. But beyond that, no.
And had you, prior to your appointment as chairperson of the Denel board, had any dealings with social or business or political or anything with any of the Gupta family or their business associates?
Well, Chairperson, as I've already indicated, I did met the Gupta family. They are stakeholders, they were stakeholders in the media industry.
In the
And
media industry?
In the course of my advising the then Minister of Communication, yes, I did meet them before.
And the media industry, that included their ownership of the New Age newspaper
Yes,
and
yes.
also ANN7 television
Yes.
station. That's right. Okay. So you had met them.
Would you remember more or less when you met them for the first time?
Well, Chairperson, I wouldn't remember.
Yes.
I wouldn't remember exactly the months, the date.
Maybe just the year?
No, the year, it's around 2014.
Oh, around 2014, okay.
Okay, thank you. And at that stage or any other stage before you assumed the chairpersonship of the Denel board, had you had any dealings, social or business or political or otherwise, with Mr. Salim Essa?
I have known Mr. Essa, I think, as early as probably 2014. And I did not have any dealings with him, except, social conversation, how are you, and whatever.
Okay. Would you describe your relationship as a friendly one?
With Mr. Essa?
Yes.
Well, I did not have a friendship with him. Yes, Mr. Issa is a very friendly guy, so he would greet, he would engage people in a conversation. So, yeah, that's all I can say.
But I'm sorry, Chair, were you aware that Mr. Salim Essa was a close business associate of the Guptas at that stage?
Well, at the time I met him, of course, he was already related with them.
Right. All right. Now, I've referred you to the passage in your affidavit where you deal with the meeting at the Gupta residence in Saxonwold. Was
Yes.
was that the only one that ever took place at their residence, or were there others that you attended meetings at their residence in Saxonwold?
This was my first and last meeting.
So you
I
only
think-
went to the Saxonwold residence once?
No. I'm referring to this matter.
Yes.
I've been there several times. I cannot tell you how many times, but I've been there. But
So then I don't quite understand what you meant when you said this was the first and the last meeting at the residence.
This was the only meeting and the last meeting where there was a discussion which indirectly related to Denel.
I see.
Yes.
And when was that? Was that before or after you'd assumed the chairpersonship of Denel?
Well, of course, it was after I was appointed. I'm not sure which months, whatever the things, but I think it was after I was appointed.
So you started, as we've seen, in July 2015,
Yeah.
and one of the people who attended was Mr. Saluji, correct?
Yes, Mr. Salujatin.
And he was there as the then GCEO of Denel, correct?
Indeed.
Now, we know that you started in July 2015. We also know, unless you correct me, that Mr. Saluji was suspended in September 2015.
Correct. I think
So barely 3 months after you started as chairpersonship at Denel. Presumably, you say you think it was after you started the chairpersonship, and I'm not trying to trip you up on that. It couldn't have been after Mr. Saluji was suspended, not so? It must have been before his suspension.
this meeting.
Yes.
Okay. I think, let me just put something in perspective here. How I understand the relationship between Mr. Saluji and Mr. Issa. My understanding of the relationship, they come from the same locality.
So it does come from?
They come from the same locality,
Yes.
from the same area. They were friends, and friends way before from where they come from. And as I understand, Mr. Saluji, with his exposure to the defense business, help Mr. Issa to negotiate the sale of the VR laser of Africa. So there was that cordial relationship according to my understanding of where they come from and where they were going. And again, I repeat, Chairperson, I assumed that the friendship and everything meant well. Of course, there's a rebuttable presumption that we all mean well until we prove otherwise. So that is the context of the relationship as understood between the two. Long relationship from the same area. Mr. Saluji helped Mr. Issa to acquire the VR laser business. That is my understanding, Chairperson.
Now, Mr. Mancha, did Mr. Saluji ever disclose to you anything that might have been improper coming from the Gupta family or their associates conveyed to him in that prior relationship he had with him?
Well, I think, as I said, that I got along very well with Mr. Saluji, and we had a number of one-on-one discussion. We would meet, would have coffee. I was supporting him, he was supporting me. I did not, as I said, I mean, the relationship, I assumed it meant well. So I was not suspecting that people are meeting because there's anything. I was not suspecting Mr. Saluji of anything.
I'd like to read to you.
I'm sorry, I'm not sure that you answered the question. I think the question was whether Mr. Saluji ever disclosed to you anything improper that Mr. Salim Essa may have, or the Guptas may have asked of him.
Chairperson, I don't remember anything like that.
Yes, okay.
If I may draw your attention to one of the affidavits that Mr. Saluji has provided to this commission. Is it correct that you were asked by the commission to have regard to his affidavits and in particular and particular passages to pay particular attention to that? Is that correct?
It is correct.
And that's why you in fact responded to some of those in the affidavit that I've taken you to, that you signed, correct?
Yes.
Okay. I'd like to just read to you, I'm not going to take you to the actual affidavit, but Chair, it is in Denell Bundle 10 at page 801. I don't believe it's necessary for your registrar.
Oh, okay, then
to bring it out. I don't want to waste time, and I don't believe this should be remotely controversial. That this is what Mr. Saluji said. I'm simply going to ask Mr. Mancha if, when he says this, if that was ever conveyed to him, Mr. Mancha. This is what Mr. Saluji said, Mr. Mancha. It was Rajesh Tony Gupta who asked me why I did not, quote, take money like everyone else, close quote. As I have indicated, I rejected his advances. I assumed he meant that there were individuals who had acquiesced. This was contained in my original statement. Did he ever relay to you at any stage, particularly while you were chairperson of the organization, that Mr. Tony Gupta had specifically asked him, Saluji, why don't you take money like everyone else? Had he ever told you that?
No.
What do you think about it now that you have heard about it? Presumably you must have seen that in his affidavit. Is that right? Or am I telling you this for the first time?
Well, of course, the allegation relates to Mr. Gupta. It does not relate to me. So, of course, I really don't have to answer that. But all I can say, it was never conveyed to me.
Yes. With respect, I think it's really for the chairperson to decide whether you can be expected to answer the question. Why I suggest to you that perhaps you should is this. And here I'm not putting to you, for example, that the Guptas said to you, why don't you take money? let alone that the Guptas paid you any money. That's not the focus of my question remotely. What I'm saying is that Mr. Saluji has given evidence in the commission that this is what he was told by one of the Guptas. The evidence has also been heard by this commission that the Guptas were heavily involved in the VR laser business. Commission has also heard evidence, and you've in fact touched on this and we're going to come back to it, that there was also a particular meeting at the Gupta residence in which you and others participated, discussing business deals. The Commission has also heard various evidence that a number of transactions were concluded between VR Laser, owned by Mr. Salim Essa, one of the business associates, and controlled as part of the Oak Bay group of companies, that a number of very lucrative contracts were concluded between Danell and VR Laser. Some of them may well have been concluded outside the time that you were chairperson. I accept that. Let's not go into that. May you please go into really the thrust of my question, which is this. Does it not concern you now, particularly where the spotlight of the Commission is now being placed on what happened at Danell, that behind the scenes of these various transactions, one of the Guptas had, according to Mr. Saluji, approached him to try and encourage him to personally benefit by receiving money, which Mr. Saluji says he resisted. But at least, are you not concerned, with the benefit of hindsight, knowing that Mr. Saluji has said this, that apparently, according to Mr. Saluji, he was directly encouraged by Mr. Gupta to accept money, in other words, a bribe? Does that not give you concern that transactions that were being presented to you and reported on to you at the level of the board which you chaired may have been tainted by offers of bribes? Not to you, but to others. Does that concern you?
Well, I think, Chair, let me reply as follows. It is my concern, irrespective of anyone, for officials of public entities to accept bribes. I'm completely against that. So if indeed a situation like that had occurred, of course I'm concerned about it. But just to go further, there was no situation under my leadership of the board, in my board, where there was a contract which was presented to us and we were supposed to approve that contract. Never. Of course, there is a Denel Asia matter which relates to Mr. Issa as a shareholder of that company. And just to put it into proper context, I'm not here to speculate, Chairperson, about what other people said that others said to them. I think it's up to the Chairperson to look at that kind of evidence, whether in terms of the mandate of the Chairperson is something that the Chairperson should express anything with. So I'm not going to speculate, other than to say I'm completely against it. Had I known about that, I would have sharply raised that matter. But I cannot comment in a matter like that as a matter of fact that it happened. I don't know it happened. I think Mr. Gupta must be given that benefit of doubt to actually put his version.
I certainly, we don't want you to speculate, number one. But number two, the question, or a previous question that Mr. Kennedy had asked, I think was legitimate to say, did Mr. Saluji ever share with you or report to you what he has told this commission had happened, namely that Mr. Tony Gupta sought to get him to agree to take money? So that was a legitimate question to say, did he ever report something like this to you?
No, Chairperson.
Okay, all right.
Would you not, thank you, Chair. Would you not agree, Mr. Mancha, that you as the Group Chief Executive Officer, the Group Chairperson of the Board, would have expected Mr. Saluji, if this had happened in his capacity as Group CEO, to have reported to you?
Well,
Surely this
Chairperson-
is the sort of thing that you would expect him to report.
Chairperson, firstly, we all have got a legal obligation to report crime to the police. The first thing I would have expected Mr. Saluji to do was to go to the police and report that so-and-so has attempted to bribe me, and these are the reasons, and opened a police case. I would have expected that. And of course, I would have expected Mr. Saluji to raise it with me, to say, look, this is what is happening. But what I know, Chairperson, is that the only meeting that I've attended where Mr. Saluji was present and Mr. Issa was present in the Gupta residence, there was a discussion about Mr. Saluji assisting Mr. Issa to buy out the private shareholders of LMT. At that stage, Chairperson, I did not even know what LMT stood for. So, and that discussion was fairly, in terms of what I was listening there, the discussion started a while ago, that Mr. Issa wanted to buy out the shareholders of LMT, who were private shareholders. And Mr. Saluji was assisting him as he assisted him, according to my understanding, Chairperson. I was not there when it happened, but my understanding is he assisted him with the VR laser. My understanding is he has assisted. In that meeting, they were discussing assisting Mr. Issa with the LMT shares.
Well, let me ask you this question. I've seen how you have dealt with that meeting in your affidavit. I think you said you were asked to make comments and you had no comments because you didn't even know what LMT was at that stage and all of that. Did you have any appreciation of why you were asked to attend that meeting?
Well, I think I understood why I had to attend the meeting. Out of the private discussion that I had with Mr. Saluji was, Chair, look, we work together, and we then agree that if the exposure to external people is no good, and then I would try as much as possible to be a buffer in terms of him not engaging the external forces, because it always creates pressure to chief executive. So we had that kind of understanding. And I went there, blank as I was. I, of course, could not comment because I would otherwise be very stupid because I did not know the issue. But for me, it was more for my chief executive officer that I agree that external pressures, we will deal with them. Let's avoid meetings which might put pressures to you. And that was the way we wanted to work.
So I just want to make sure I understand this. Are you saying that there had been a discussion between yourself and Mr. Saluji along those lines on how to handle these requests for meetings by certain people from outside people? Or are you saying there had been a discussion between the two of you?
Well, Chairperson, the state-owned companies operate within a political environment. And we discussed that, look...
We being yourself and Mr. Saluji?
And Mr. Saluji,
okay,
that I would deal with the politics of things and concentrate on the business. So we were working on those bases to say I would deal, whichever the politician is, I will deal with that rather than for you to have pressure.
Now, I may be misunderstanding. So I thought that meeting was quite early in your term, actually when Mr. Saluji gave evidence, the impression I have of his evidence is that the meeting, I think he spoke about 2 meetings, if I'm not mistaken, that he said he attended at the Gupta residence in which you were present. I may be mistaken. But the first one, at least, if there were 2, he said Mr. Salim Essa was the first person to tell him about you being the chairperson of the new board. I think he said actually Mr. Salim Essa put it to him on the basis that he wanted Mr. Saluji to meet the new person or somebody who's going to be the new chairperson of the board or a new chairperson of the board. But certainly I gained the impression that, one, he didn't know ahead of being told by Mr. Salim Essa that you were going to be the new chairperson of the board or you were already the new chairperson of the board. That's the impression I got from his affidavit, which you have read. I don't know whether you got the same impression.
Well, Chairperson, the reality is the appointment was made by Cabinet. I'm not sure, I think it was May or April, whatever the case. That Cabinet decision, I think 24 May, whatever the case. So of course, people in the space knew that the Cabinet has approved a new board. I cannot confirm the discussion between Mr. Issa and Mr. Saluji. I was not there. All I can say is what came to my knowledge. Immediately when the former Mr. Saluji knew that I was appointed, we started to have interaction.
Even before the meeting with which involved Mr. Salim Essa, yourself, and Ms. Saluji? Or you might not recall.
Sorry, Chairperson.
Or you might not recall the sequence.
I can't recall the sequence, which meeting came first. That I cannot recall, but we had our introductory meetings and we discussed the way we want to work, what we expect from one another, and we really struck a very good relationship. I liked Mr. Saluji. I think I respected him. I think he did the same to me. So we were getting well together.
Is your recollection that your first interaction with him was independent of Mr. Salim Essa?
Yes.
Or you can't remember?
Yes.
It was independent of Mr. Salim Essa.
Look, I think, Chair, you're asking me a very difficult question because, as I've already said to you,
yes,
Mr. Issa and Mr. Saluji,
they knew each other.
They knew each other, and
yes,
there was friendship amongst them.
Yes.
What they were talking between themselves, I don't know.
Yes,
right?
yes.
But when I met Mr. Saluji the first time, he has never mentioned to me that he's requested to meet me because of Mr. Issa.
Yeah.
I took it, he's meeting me as the new chairperson of the board, and even the discussions we had was confined to the two of us, how we're going to work together. He briefed me about certain challenges that the company was going through. It was not about other people. Yeah.
Okay. Mr. Kennedy?
Thank you, Chair. I just want, before we get to the time where we are going to adjourn, just to pick up a point that you raised earlier. And that is that Mr. Saluji did not tell you that he had been told by Tony Gupta that why don't you take money like the rest of you? And you confirmed that that was not told to you, and you only discovered that in the course of what's come out in this commission. Can I just ask you hypothetically to just put yourself in this situation, just to assist the commission? If you had known that from Mr. Saluji, if when you assumed your position as chairperson of the board, and the CEO had disclosed, as he should have, that he'd been made this improper approach by Tony Gupta. In the context of VR Laser, a Gupta-associated company doing business with Denel, presumably you would have taken that seriously, and secondly, quite apart from what Mr. Saluji should have done by laying a criminal charge or a complaint to the South African police, presumably it would have affected your attitude as Denel chairperson to whether any business should be done by Denel with VR Laser or any associate of the Guptas if this sort of improper offer was being made. Would you agree?
No, of course I would have been opposed to that.
Yes.
Vigorously.
Yes.
And I wouldn't want the business to be associated with those kind of activities.
Exactly. Particularly because, number one, legally, you shouldn't be doing business as a state-owned institution with anybody who is offering bribes to your most senior member of management, correct?
Well, true, but I think get to this, I think where you're getting to.
Well, don't worry about where I'm getting to.
Yeah, but let me answer you, because...
Well, just answer the question that I was at, not where I'm getting to.
Yes, because I've already answered you.
Okay.
Whether a bribe was offered by Mr. Gupta or anybody to Mr. Saluji, I don't know. Yeah. You are asking me to a hypothetical situation.
Exactly. Yeah.
I've already explained to you that I'm opposed to those activities.
Right.
And anyone where those activities happen, if that person is law-abiding, would go to the police before he goes to anybody else.
I understand that,
that person would report it to the authorities, and that person would report it to the board.
Exactly.
Yes. My board has got no record of that report.
No, I understand your evidence, and frankly, with respect, you don't need to repeat it.
Yes.
We've heard your evidence that it was not reported, and my question is put on a hypothetical basis. What if he had done that? So the one thing would be that legally it would not be appropriate for a state institution to do business with any entity that is offering bribes to its senior employees, or to any employee for that matter. There was a second aspect, not so, and that is this, that surely you don't want reputational damage to the person, to the entity of which you were the chairperson, because that could be hugely damaging. Correct?
True.
Of course, we know exactly that type of damage has happened to Denel because of the allegations of state capture. Not so.
Yes, Chairperson, just to add on that, the internal protocol of the company, there's a whistleblower mechanism.
Right.
There's internal audit, and of course, Denel operating in the environment it does, where there's a lot of attempts of underhanded matters. There's vigorous mechanism to try to enforce non-corrupt practices. So internally, their mechanism, he of course did not even have to disclose this whistleblower, very protected system within the company. It would be processed by internal audit. Internal audit had outside people and all sorts of things. Yes, such activities cannot be tolerated, and we would not have tolerated it had we known an activity like that indeed took place, or it was reported to us.
All right, thank you. May I just conclude, if I may, Chair, with just a question or two on what a further aspect you raised in the opening statement, and that is that you yourself did not receive anything improper from the Guptas or their associates, correct?
Indeed, correct.
And you didn't receive any inappropriate benefit from them?
Correct, Chairperson.
And you complained that false allegations were made about your travelling overseas at their expense, and you told the Chair, as I recall in your opening statement, you did travel a number of times overseas in your official capacity as chairperson, but that was always at your own expense, correct?
Well, Chairperson, let me just correct. I did not travel at the expense. I've traveled at my own expense. As far as any benefit is concerned, no benefit I've received. And those traveling that he's referring about, I did so in my own personal capacity.
In your personal capacity, or I understood you earlier to say, I may have been wrong, I understood you earlier to say in your official capacity as the chairperson. Was it in your personal capacity?
Well, that's absolutely very wrong. I think I was very specific.
I think he said there were some that there are occasions when he traveled in his personal capacity, and there
Indeed,
were
Chairperson.
occasions when he traveled in his capacity as chairperson of the
Yes.
board. Is that right?
Indeed, Chairperson.
Then I missed that and apologize, as I say, that, as I recall. So there was some for on your own personal behalf and others in your official capacity as chairperson. Let's just deal with when you were traveling in your official capacity, presumably Denel should have paid for those costs, correct?
Well, they've always covered those costs.
So they did, right? And when you traveled for your own personal benefit, who paid those costs, the travel
I've
costs?
always covered my cost.
So you paid that yourself?
I've covered my cost.
Okay. Can I take you, please, in the same bundle 8 to page 465?
What page?
465. This is an invoice that appears where Travel Excellence, apparently a travel agency, was invoicing West Dawn Investments in October 2015 for certain travel arrangements on Emirates. Now, October 2015 was a few months after you assumed the chairpersonship of Denel, correct?
Indeed.
Right. And this appears to invoice West Dawn Investments. West Dawn Investments was a shareholder in VR Laser, correct?
Yes.
And West Dawn Investments was part of the Oak Bay group of companies, part of the Gupta business empire, not so?
Yes, it seems so.
It seems so.
Yeah.
You,
Can
you
I
can't
give you a
dispute that, is
provision?
that right?
No. I'm not disputing that.
Okay.
Yes. Can I just qualify the question?
Well,
I knew
please
that
don't
West
qualify
Dawn-
my question. You can qualify your answer.
Okay. No. Qualify my answer.
Yeah.
Yes, Chairperson, I knew in December that West Dawn is a part of the VR. And how did I know this? I knew this, Chairperson, as a result of a due diligence report which was conducted on VR in the process of the work of Denel Asia. Who are the shareholders? How much is this shareholder receiving? Yes, I knew.
So are you saying, you said December, did you?
December 2015.
2015.
Yeah.
Are you saying you only learned for the first time in December 2015 that West Dawn was involved in VR Laser and that the Guptas were involved in West Dawn?
Well, Chairperson, I knew for the first time in 2015 as a result of the due diligence.
Yes, I'm not asking you where you got that from. I'm just trying to indulge me, please.
Yes.
I'm just taking step by step.
Yes.
You did not know before December 2015 that
Yes.
West Dawn was had an interest in VR Laser and that the Guptas had an interest in West Dawn.
Correct.
So in other words, at the time that this invoice was issued in October 2015, you weren't aware that West Dawn had an interest in it.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Chairperson, can I just
Yes.
explain about what council is getting to?
Mr. Mancha, please, you should with respect know that
With
lawyers
respect,
tend to...
Mr. Chairman, the witness has the right to explain and answer, and that's all he asks, and Mr. Kennedy should afford him that opportunity.
Well, I think the problem, Mr. Sidlia, is that the witness didn't say he wanted to explain his answer to this question. He said he wants to explain about, I think, where he's getting to or something like that. I think that is where the problem is. If he wants to explain his answer to that question, it's fine. And if then he later on ask a question that he thinks where he's going, then at that time he can answer and explain. And of course, in due course, in re-examination, you can pick it up and get him to explain whatever might not have been clarified. I think, unless I didn't hear him correctly, I think that's where the problem is. If he wants to clarify his answer to this question, no problem. But I think he nods. I think that's if that is that, there's no problem. But I think he was saying, I think I know where Mr. Kennedy is going, and I want to clarify it before he gets there.
Mr.
But in the end, he will get a chance to clarify whatever he wants to clarify. It's just a question of timing.
Mr. Chair, if I may respond, a witness has the right to put an answer and or a situation in context. And I know there's time constraints, and it seems to me Mr. Kennedy attempts to get to a certain point before we have to take the adjournment. But with great respect, the fact that we have limited time left, only a minute or so, we're already over our time, should not force a situation where the witness is not afforded a fair opportunity to put in context whatever he wants to put in context.
Let me go back to the witness. What did you want to do, Mr. Manjal?
Chairperson, I wanted to give context following from the answers that I've given, which...
You wanted to give context to your answer?
To my answer.
To the question?
To the question that was asked.
Okay, all right. I think you can do that.
Yeah. And Chairperson, what I'm saying here is, as far as Westin is concerned, I've already explained when did I know that they were the shareholders. But in terms of my traveling arrangement, I've arranged my traveling through Ashu, who runs a side business. And Ashu works for the Guptas. He runs a side travel business.
That's Ashu who?
Ashu, I think
Chawla.
Ashu Chawla, something like that.
Chawla.
Yes, and
Okay.
how did this happen? This first happened with my trip to India, the first trip to India. And I've arranged through him. He told me the cost, and I've settled with him. So the information that appears with Dawn, who or what, of course, for the first time, when these documents are given to me, that is where I see this. So I can't say how was he running his business, but all I can say is I pay for what I was supposed to pay. And he was assisting me with that.
Okay.
So, but I cannot really take the chairman any further about whether was done or not was done, or which I can't take the chairperson further.
No, that's fine. I think that related to the question. That it was a context to the question.
Thank you, Chair.
We are at 5 past, Mr. Kennedy.
Oh, we're pretty late.
Yeah.
Thank you, Chair. Would this be a convenient time?
Yeah, I think we should adjourn. I'm sorry to everybody that we can't continue and finish, but I've spoken to Mr. Kennedy and to Mr. Sillier. We will make arrangements for Mr. Manjal to come back and to continue and finish. That will be arranged in due course.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. We are going to adjourn for the day.
As you please.
We adjourn.
Thank you.
All rise.